The impostor syndrome is a psychological phenomenon where people, despite clear evidence of their success, feel like frauds. They believe they fooled others into thinking that they're competent and that it's only a matter of time before they're found out. Hey, if you don't know me, my name is Gregory and I'm the founder of the Brain Academy. We help you understand your brain, take control and empower your life at brainacademy.com and through these videos. Well, I remember I experienced this imposter syndrome myself when I was in my 20s after my studies. I felt like a fraud in this world of adults. And still, looking back at it now, maybe I was just playing that game of faking till you make it or something like that. I'm still not sure. So, this syndrome isn't just about occasional self-doubt. When it gets out of hand, it creates a cycle of insecurity, procrastination and fear of failures. Studies indicate that as many as 2/3 of people might experience imposter syndrome at some point, especially in high-pressure environments. It's often linked to factors like perfectionism, social inequality, or demanding environments. Although it affects both men and women, women seem to be more susceptible to it. Some suggest that this is due to social and biological reasons like hormonal influences on behavior and self-perception. That sounds so sexist. I feel bad saying it. Anyway, from an evolutionary standpoint, some researchers speculate that the imposter syndrome might have roots in our instincts to remain safe and avoid danger, right? Feeling like an imposter could be a way to avoid becoming a perceived threat to others, which might have helped our ancestors survive in hierarchical societies. You know, being successful without becoming arrogant and dominant sounds like a great strategy to fly below the radar and avoid getting people around you to become jealous and, who knows, even want to get rid of you, right? So this is just one of many ways that our brain ends up sabotaging ourselves because of obsolete survival mechanisms, in this case social survival, to be able to fit in and remain inside a group and benefit from its protection. However, today, it's not about survival anymore, right? And yet, this imposter syndrome contributes to stress, anxiety and even depression, as it's part of a cycle that prevents us from feeling fully rewarded for our achievements. The neurobiology behind it is still being explored, but some scientists suspect that the syndrome is linked to stress hormones like cortisol and neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, of course, which regulate our emotions and feelings of happiness. Balancing these hormones might help alleviate the symptoms, but more research is needed. But there is yet another way to look at it, of which I'm very fond of. So you see, in psychotherapy, Carl Jung and before him Freud were looking at who we are and how we perceive ourselves as two different things. So on the one hand, we have our core self, our ego, which is who we truly are, deep down inside, with all our doubts and insecurities. And then there is this outer layer, that we have built for ourselves to protect that fragile core. So Jung calls this outer layer, our persona. It's the side of us that we've decided to show to the world. It can be whatever we want it to be, but mostly it's a representation of what we think others think of us. And so we comply to that, to these social expectations. Now here's the tricky part. The more distance there is between our core self, who we truly are and how we truly feel deep down inside, and what we show the world, that outside layer, right? The more we are subject to mental health issues like stress, anxiety, depression, and yes, of course, the famous imposter syndrome as well. This explains perfectly why famous actors and singers often feel so miserable despite their apparent successes, right? The whole world sees them as perfect and so talented and they have all this money, while the artist just feels like they are just themselves. And when they try to live up to that image of perfection that the world projects upon them, they feel like a fraud. And they feel alone and miserable and misunderstood because they feel that they can't just be themselves anymore. That's where the compensation mechanisms kick in, like alcohol and drugs and buying all kinds of very expensive stuff. But none of that can actually help them deal with the emptiness they are left with. That's why these people who seem to have it all often end up battling addiction and depression and, trigger warning, they sometimes were talking even about taking their own lives. It's tragic, really. So be careful what you wish for. If it's fame and fortune, the imposter syndrome might turn it into a living hell. But of course, it doesn't need to be that extreme, of course. Maybe your next promotion can be enough to already trigger this syndrome. So, well, tell me, did you ever feel like an imposter? Share in the comments below. And if you want more videos like this one, make sure to like and subscribe. Brain out.
Sharp.